A huge warm welcome, art lovers, to the art vlog with me, George Dopamine. Today I'm approaching Trafalgar Square to bring you inside the National Gallery's Spring and Summer Blockbuster, After Impressionism, Inventing Modern Art. This show promises to tell us the very well told but always exhilarating story of how Impressionisms, in challenging artistic norms, set forward a crazy period of experimentation between 1886, the date of the last Impressionist exhibition, and the First World War. It's going to focus, according to the National Gallery's blurb, on three giants of this post-Impressionist era, Gauguin, Cezzane and Van Gogh, but also show how these artists inspired art all over Europe to shoot off in many directions: Cubism, Fauvism, Surrealism. I'm hoping we'll see the lot. This is obviously because there's no one post-Impressionist movement. Wonder if the show can show that. The show's on all the way from now in March till the 13th of August. It is £24 to get in the week, 26 at weekends. So it's a top price show. And obviously it's competing with other blockbusters such as Donatello at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Do check out my vlog on that. Spain and Hispanic Art at the Royal Academy. Do check out my vlog on that. And the upcoming Rossetti show at Tate Britain, along with lots of others. So hopefully this vlog, if nothing else, will give you a sneak peek and decide in this cost of living crisis whether it's worth your hard-earned money. There's just one little aside I wanted to mention as well. This is an example of how the art world, like many other worlds, has been infected by Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. Originally, the National Gallery was going to work in tandem with the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, somewhere I've visited several times, to provide works and loans to each other's art. So there was going to be 10 works coming from the Pushkin Museum in Moscow, along with 5 from the State Hermitage in St. Petersburg. And likewise, the National Gallery was going to reciprocate, and then the show was going to move from here to the Pushkin Museum. That's no longer the case. The National Gallery have instead decided to press on with this exhibition by replacing the Russian works with works from other European and American, predominantly art galleries. So I'm going to also be looking and seeing if that's affected things as well. Do come with me as we head inside After Impressionism, Inventing Modern Art. Start of the show is really just an aperitif, but what an aperitif with Cezanne's Bathers from the National Gallery itself taking centre stage. The first main section of the exhibition is explosive. It explores how three giants of contemporary art, Cezzane, Van Gogh and Gauguin, took art away from Impressionism in new directions. Cezanne's Mont Saint-Victoire illustrates perfectly how he experimented to produce volume on a two-dimensional surface. Wonderful selection of Van Goghs, including 4 from private collections, illustrate his unique use of colour to produce such expressive works. Section is centred around his Breton work, conveying ideas and emotions rather than bringing in accurate records of everyday life. You get to see the visions after the sermon, this seminal piece that's been lent from Scotland. This still life seems to just float on the table very strangely, and is a marked comparison to Cezanne's own example.
shown in the second section how art developed in different directions. The pointillist style of the neo-impressionists like Seurat and Signac tried to take the transition of light into colour even further, attempting to push the boundaries a little bit towards abstraction and capture mood as well as light. Whereas we clearly see the artistic links and influence of symbolism between Bonnard and Gauguin in this painting, which was painted, by the way, in Gauguin's company. We're encouraged to see Degas' influence in the work of Toulouse-Lautrec, including in his sublime The Reader. And there's a painting I haven't put here as well, which shows a wonderful link to the next room, where we explore works by the Nabis group. We see Gauguin's influence very quickly, especially in this early work, The Talisman, which was created under instruction from Gauguin, and we note the play with semi-abstraction. What really struck me was that initially you can see evidence of this kind of radical strain of expression from members of the Nabis group, who were clearly, from the painting in the previous room, enthralled to Cezzane and Gauguin particularly. But as their careers developed, they forked off in different paths and became a bit more conservative in both their themes and their portrayal and their artistic style, although there's still certainly a radical modern edge to their work. The exhibition is really clearly keen to show that this post-impressionist world was not just Parisian based, and it takes us to Barcelona and Brussels, where a highlight was this painting by Ramon Casas, The Automobile, an iconic work of modernity in my opinion. And we also get to see the young Picasso as he just sort of dabbles on the edge of his blue period with this rather downbeat painting of an absinthe drinker. But on the back of this painting is a much more impressionist influence of this woman here as well. And I did have to chuckle at this rather ghastly kind of portrait here as well, you can see. I did find myself questioning what the link with the painters from Brussels had with the painters from Barcelona, but there were still some beautiful paintings here, so I'll give you a chance to have a look at those. Two large works by Klimt introduced us to the Vienna and Berlin sections. There are some wonderful works here, especially as you'll see later on, works by Munch. But also there was a kind of missing as well. I was wondering where Egon Schiele was, for example, to provide a counterpoint to the pristine beauty of the Klimts. theme which New Terrains 1 attempts to coalesce around is that idea that there was a greater appreciation for so-called quote-unquote primitive art, that unlike the sort of colonial romanticism of Gauguin's Tahitian paintings, these were very much European. Again, I found myself longing for Ludwig Kirchner in the paintings from the bridge, but there was some really interesting works here. The final room is an exaltation, and it's where the show works really well. Down one side we see the drive towards Fauvism, and we see some wonderful Matisses which have been lent from different institutions and also private collections, and as you can hopefully see, a combination of paintings and sculptural works as well. An incredible highlight was this one where the young girl reading, his daughter actually, is faced with this sort of background which almost looks as if it's on fire. It's absolutely incredible. And this sculpture of the dance from 1907 really nicely leads you into one of the big surprises of the show, which is André Derain's The Dance from 1906, which precedes Matisse's by a long way. And you can see the connection between these two artists in this one as well, which is Madame Matisse in a kimono. On the other side of the room, we see the drive towards Cubism. This Picasso, which has come from America, is kind of like a little bit of a shock when you suddenly come to George Braque's classic piece, and then we see Picasso also responding to this new Cubist desire to express. I love about these Cubics works, by Picasso especially, are that you see reality breaking down, you see figurative portrayal breaking up, and you really realise that we're really close on the road to abstraction. Finally, it takes us from Impressionism to Post-Impressionism of Mondrian and into almost pure abstraction. And I promise you this last little bit of the show is one that will make your heart sing. It's really, really beautiful.
Wow, well, I hope you enjoyed that feast of post-impressionist art from the National Gallery's Spring and Summer blockbuster After Impressionism, Inventing Modern Art. It was certainly a show that I recommend and really enjoyed, and my advice to you is, if you go along, is just to see it as a chance to see great painting after great painting. There were many, not all of them, but many of the paintings here are bona fide masterpieces. I thought the attempt to tell a new story around this very well told story didn't fully succeed, but that didn't take away from my enjoyment of the show. But anyway, let's start with the positives, and there were three really for me. The first, in terms of the actual collection of art themselves, were the first main room after the little introduction, where you saw Van Gogh, Cezzane and Gauguin all in one place, partly talking to each other, but also very much going off on different paths as well. And to see so many of their works with a sprinkling of Degas as well was a wonderful treat. And you know, it's rare to see that high quality in that space in an exhibition. And likewise, the final room, entitled New Terrains 2, it was really strong, where you see one direction shooting off into Fauvism, one direction shooting off into Cubism, and then the push towards full abstraction right at the end. I can guarantee that you'll leave the first room with your heart singing, and you'll leave the final room absolutely elated as you leave the exhibition. That was wonderful. My second highlight was actually the paintings from private collections. Usually I'm looking for stellar loans from national and internationally
quality galleries. But actually, for me, the paintings that stood out that I hadn't seen in the flesh, so to speak, before were from private collections. And Andre Derain's The Dance and Madame Matisse in a Kimono were both excellent. And The Dance was like an amazing painting, which I spent a lot of time looking at. And I'm pretty sure it doesn't have the reputation of Matisse's work The Dance produced a few years later, because it's sort of squirreled away in a private collection. So it's great to see that. The Cubist Picasso picture, Wilhelm Ude, I can't pronounce it, was excellent as well, as was the Klimt portrait from a private collection, which paired really nicely with the National Gallery version. And in fact, the private collection version example was more colourful, almost like a fashion shoot, really. Also, really loved the Toulouse-Lautrec, The Reader, a really muted painting where you could clearly see the influence of Degas from a private collection. But most of all, the 4 Van Goghs from a private collection. That was really special to see them together, along with a couple of others that were loaned from institutions. And they were, I mean, the plough, I love the painting of the ploughman that he took from the window at Saint-Rémy was a really special painting, showing lots of Van Gogh absolutely at his best. The third highlight was the getting to know a few new artists. Ramon Casas, I think you pronounce it, and his painting The Automobile is up there in my opinion with some of those great transition paintings to the modern world that we know today, along with the futurist art which came later, and works from the 19th century like Monet and Turner, painting the sort of steam of the Industrial Revolution, and the fact that a woman is driving in 1900 on her own with these great big white lights made it a really forward-thinking and important painting to me. As I say, I don't know if the narration of the exhibition, in an attempt to tell a new story, worked very well. In certain areas after those first couple of rooms, I was struggling to see the connection between Barcelona and Brussels. There were some great works, don't get me wrong, in there, but it was sort of like, why have they been paired together? Is there any reason? And similarly, I thought the Vienna and Berlin room worked better, but there was still some key works missing, and Munch was sort of an honorary Berliner because he obviously did live and work there for an important period of his life. And the New Terrain one did seem to be as if it was just that the artists were being thrown together with tenuous connections. But again, that didn't mean I didn't enjoy the work in there before it comes back strongly in the final room. So I would say the narration of the show is flawed, but that might well be because there's a shadow show here. Obviously the show that didn't happen, and that was the one that would have involved loans from the Pushkin and State Hermitage, and we don't know what that show would have looked like. I want to say, first of all, I'm really pleased the National Gallery pressed ahead and plugged the holes with loans from other exhibitions and from other galleries, and private collections. You know, we as art lovers in the UK and any visitors to the UK benefit from that. And secondly, it was the right decision. Clearly there are consequences to the horrific war in Ukraine, and this is one of them. The only moment where I sort of, that shadow loomed large was when I was looking at a Kandinsky in the final room and thinking, you know, was a sort of like not massively important Kandinsky, and he's such an important figure in this story of art between the 1880s and 1914. And I sort of thought, oh well, five paintings were coming from the State Hermitage. Would one of them have been their magnificent Kandinskys, which are hung on the wall there? Having said that, it was absolutely the right decision, and well done the National Gallery for putting this on. I think it was very busy when I went, so as always, if you can do and you've got the sort of flexibility, then try and go outside of this peak time. And it's £24 in the week, £26 is steep, but value for money in my opinion for the amazing paintings you see. I was in there for about 2 hours, partly because I was going very slowly to sort of try and get time with the paintings, and also and sculptures as well. It's on until the 13th of August, so it's got a long run. I will probably be back, even despite the price, because I want to be in the world of these masterpieces again. Don't forget to subscribe to the art vlog. If you do go to this exhibition, please leave any of your views in the comments. Have I got it wrong? Have I missed anything that you think was absolutely crucial? I haven't put everything in there, and I deliberately don't do that, so to tantalize people to go, do subscribe to the art vlog and hit that notification bell for reviews of upcoming upcoming shows across London and the South East. I'm going to be down in Sussex as well quite soon, visiting some openings down there. And most importantly of all, get out there and keep exploring this wonderfully rich UK art scene.